Welcome into another edition of Patriots Draft Countdown, presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And we're here with a big day. Evan, we saw quarterbacks, we saw wide receivers, we saw the running backs, and all three are big positions of need for the Patriots. What stood out to you most? Let's start at the top with the big three, the top quarterbacks.
Yeah, it was good to hear from all three of those guys, Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, Drake Maye, all talking here this afternoon or this morning. I don't even know what time of day it is anymore.
What day is it?
But I thought it was interesting how they're just all different personalities. And I've said before, they play differently, too. They're different playing styles, different personalities. So this is truly, I believe, turning into a flavor situation where some teams are probably going to have one guy as the number one quarterback. Some teams are going to have another guy as the number one quarterback. I still think the consensus should be Caleb Williams is the best in the draft, but I think that the more you hear around here is that there isn't quite that 100% consensus, and there's a lot of different types of quarterbacks in this draft, and that's exactly how they presented themselves at the podium.
It's funny how it works because I feel like, I get into this draft process after the season ends, and it just seems like, it's already established. Caleb Williams first, Drake Maye second. That's how it's going to go. Maybe Marvin Harrison sneaks in there, somebody trades up, but that's how it is. And now here we are, and it seems like Jalen Daniels has been really making a push. Like, these guys haven't even played football, but all of a sudden it's like jockeying for position, and Caleb Williams, he's not going to provide his medicals here, and he might fall now, and so like all these kind of different things are happening, and I just like sit here wondering like how much of it is actually true. Are these just teams putting out late night, having a few drinks out at St. Elmo's, putting out that information, trying to get the draft board the way you like it and trying to get your guy to fall to you?
Well, that's the ultimate thing about this is that there's 32 different teams. There's 32 different GMs or de facto GMs in our case. And then there's 32 scouting staffs, right? So just because one guy has it one way and another guy has it another way, everybody says, well, there's not a consensus now. It's like, well, did you poll all the executives in the NFL or did you poll two people, right? So I think that that's a big part of it is that everybody can have their own spin on things. Everybody can have their own perspective. That's what makes the draft fun for me is that we can watch the same tape and come away with drastically different opinions about these guys, and that's the cool part about this whole process.
So I was really just impressed by Jalen Daniels, Drake Maye, both. I mean, I'm with you. I listen to both of them. I'm like, yep, I like these guys. I know that they each have some issues that they're going to have to work through. Which let's face it, 99% of the guys here have something that they have to work through, whether it's size, whether it's speed, all those things, staying healthy, getting healthy, all those different things. But I'm at that point now where it's like, I can deal with either one of these guys' warts. They're both really appealing to me as far as their athletic ability, and there's a lot to work with there. And it makes you hope, when we talk about the tackle position, where do you want to throw a rookie quarterback back there? And I know a big thing with Jalen Daniels, the amount of hits he's been taking, he's trying not to take more hits, but at least these guys aren't going to be statues back there. They both can move a little bit. They both have some athleticism, so it at least makes you believe that they can maybe manage that, get away from some of those hits, even if the offensive line isn't great in 2024.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with both these guys is that they extend plays a little bit differently. Jaden Daniels is more of a scrambler. He's going to take off. He's going to run the ball. Now, Drake Maye does scramble a little bit, but I think he has a little bit more of that second reaction throwing ability where when the play breaks down, it becomes playground football. He can go off script and create. I wouldn't say that that's as prevalent on Jalen Daniels' tape, but as you talk to people, I think the one thing about Jalen Daniels is that it's hard to find a lot of flaws with his film from last year. He put up 50 touchdowns. He won the Heisman Trophy. Like, there's not a whole lot to sit there and say, I don't really, as a thrower, not for me. So there's not a whole lot of that. But I think the one thing that you do definitely hear is that he's wiry. He's got a slender frame. And when he was up there at the podium, I couldn't help but think that as well, that this kind of looks like more like a wide receiver than a quarterback. And you mentioned the hits that he's going to take or has taken in the past. And that's the main thing is if you are going to be a guy that's going to have to run it 100-plus times to be your most dynamic self, how are you going to manage your body and manage those body blows? Because durability is going to be the number one concern. I don't believe he's doing on-field drills here this week. I think he's saving it for the pro day. But he will weigh in, and that'll be tomorrow. And that's going to be huge. Remember last year was Bryce Young, right? That everybody was waiting to see how tall he was and things like that. This year it's going to be, can Jaden Daniels break 200 pounds? So maybe he goes to Prime 47 St. Elmo's tonight, eats like a huge steak, and comes back in a water weight or whatever. Just pack on the lbs and get yourself over 205, Jaden Daniels, and you'll be fine.
So I do want to talk a little bit about the secondary quarterbacks. I mean, the big three, and all the scuttlebutt, and you've seen various reports, and generally they kind of seem to point towards Patriots are interested in a quarterback. I mean,
Yeah.
Of course they are, and maybe they're like us. They just want to see who falls. But we heard from Michael Penix, who just said he didn't meet with the Patriots. I thought that was a little bit interesting. Maybe I'm sure they're getting to him. I think you said they met with him down at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
So they've gotten the sense of him. But one guy I want to bring up, and this is kind of off the cuff, so I apologize. As I know, the kid from Florida State, Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
I was just kind of impressed with him at the podium, and I know he's small and he's coming off an injury, and it sounds like he's going to be okay. But give me some thoughts on him, because he's a guy that I just listening to him, and this happens a lot to me at the combine, where it's like, all right, I haven't watched a lot of this guy yet, but there's just something I got a vibe from him of like, he just seems like he kind of has something there. I don't know, it could be totally wrong, but there's a handful of guys, he's one of them that I circled here today that I'm saying I want to go back, I want to look at him a little bit, maybe as a developmental guy. I know he had an outstanding season before the injury, so talk to me about him.
Well, he definitely has that leadership intangible quality. Even after he got injured this past season, coming out and talking about how Florida State got shafted, frankly, in the college football playoff and not making the college football playoff, you could see that leadership. You can see that competitiveness and that fire that he certainly has. You mentioned his size; that's going to be a huge knock for him. It's not just Jaden Daniels is 6'3", so he's just slender. Travis is shorter and smaller, so you do hear on the high end, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, maybe he's a really good runner. He's a dynamic player with the ball in his hands, and he's not a terrible passer, but I wouldn't say that he's as refined that he's going to sit there in the pocket and just pick you apart. He was more of a guy that was running around in college and making plays and just kind of making things happen, or throwing jump balls to Keon Coleman, which is never a bad thing. So I think that's sort of where it's at with him. The injury is obviously going to be major. He has said in the past, though, that he has a chance of playing next year, potentially, even though he broke his leg in, I believe, November of this past college football season. So maybe that's possible. I don't know. But as someone that is a late round flyer, I look at him and I look at my guy Bazooka Joe Milton from Tennessee, as if they're thinking double dip, if they're thinking something along those lines. I probably wouldn't say if they're thinking no quarterback early, because that would not make much sense. But maybe a double dip situation if you wanted to get a guy that has a little bit more of a higher ceiling than your typical late round quarterback. I think both those guys have some physical tools to work with.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, because Joe Milton is like, he's like kind of not quite Cam Newton, but it's like, it's like little Cam Newton. Like if Cam Newton had a slightly smaller little brother, like that is what he looks like, but just has the measurements, everything.
Yeah, I think he's discount Anthony Richardson. Like I don't like comparing people to Cam Newton because I think Cam Newton was great. I know that's maybe
he's a freak, right?
Maybe that's a controversial take. I don't know,
but
the
MVP, didn't he?
MVP of the league, Heisman Trophy winner. So I look at it, Anthony Richardson and Joe Milton, and I say, probably not quite as athletic, not quite as alien-like as an athlete, but has similar qualities. Big arm, huge arm. Like a guy can throw it like 80 yards in the air. Athletic, mobile, big frame, all those types of things. And now that they're looking at quarterbacks at 3, I don't necessarily feel this way as strongly, but let's say that that's a smokescreen and that doesn't actually come to fruition, and we're talking about J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. If you want to double dip then later in the draft and just throw a dart at a guy that has a huge ceiling in Joe Milton, but probably has a very good chance of maybe not even being in the league in a couple years as well, that's the way I would go. If you're going to go with like a Bo Nix, who's more of that Alex Smith, like conservative type of quarterback, here's a guy that you could kind of pair with him, that's someone that will be aggressive and push the ball down the field.
Now tomorrow we're going to get to see these guys work out on field, and I know Evan, you'll be glued to that, and we'll do some write-ups about their performance, their measurements, all that kind of stuff. Just generally with the quarterback class, what are you kind of looking for tomorrow, and especially with a guy like J.J. McCarthy?
Right.
We talked a lot about people saying he's going to be a combine riser, and listen to him today. Obviously is well established what he did in his career at Michigan, but What are you looking for tomorrow? Any particular testing or numbers that you think can really help one or two of these guys?
Well, I would say just in terms of the throwing on the field with J.J. McCarthy, he needs to prove to me that he has more clubs in his bag because he didn't really get to flex that at Michigan. So can you throw different types of throws, different types of routes? He's got a big enough arm. I'm not necessarily concerned with arm talent with him, but it's more about the touch and the accuracy in the short and intermediate. He is somebody that I thought on film really struggled with taking a little bit off the football, and then it really affected his ball placement and his accuracy in the first two levels of the defense. So he's throwing it 100 miles an hour when he doesn't have to, and now guys are adjusting. It's going off guys' hands because they're 5 yards away from him and they're trying to catch a bazooka. It's like, let's slow down, right? So I think that's a big thing. I think we talk about arm talent a lot, and arm talent to me is not arm strength. Arm strength and arm talent are two different things. Arm talent is the ability to hit it with a little bit of touch, to hit it with the driver when you need to change arm angles and be able to generate velocity when you have to not throw with a solid base because there's muddied pockets and things like that. I think that J.J. McCarthy has decent enough arm strength. I'm not sure he has arm talent, so we'll see what he looks like in the field.
So good stuff on the QBs. We actually had a chance also to talk to Field Yates of ESPN, get his opinion on the quarterback class. And obviously Field is, he's got a grand preview over there at ESPN. So take a listen to what Field had to say about this quarterback class. All right, we're excited now to be joined by Field Yates from ESPN. And Field, thanks for coming out here to the Combine. I'm sure you're going crazy right now, so appreciate the time that you're taking.
It's great to be here. I'm fired up to talk Patriots, talk the draft. I'm bummed. I'm actually missing the Patriots draft event this year for the first time in probably 7 or 8 years.
Well, guess who they called up to replace you? A couple of idiots on the other side of you.
Come on now. Well, my lesson learned was don't move on the well, I guess the event I think is late March, but I'm early April I'm moving, so it's just kind of a perfect storm of circumstances that made it a little bit more difficult this year than the past 7 or 8 that I've been doing it. I hate to miss it because it's one of my favorite events of the year.
Well, we'll have to fill your big shoes.
Come on.
You have to give me some pointers.
I'm trying to think.
It's a tough crowd. Patriots fans, they have high expectations.
Especially
they do have high
now.
hopes right now. Yeah, but this is different. I would like to tell you what this draft event will be like, but this is the first time they've picked in the top 10 since the head coach was coming out of the draft. Yeah. So what 2008 is 16 years ago?
Yeah.
So very unfamiliar territory here, obviously. So in prior years, it's been sort of projecting like who might be available at 29, 32, 14. Now pick 3. Like it makes things quite straightforward. We have to just play out 3 scenarios and we're good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we've been doing. I mean, we're already like, all right, is it this? Are we trading down? Are we trading up? But just, we had the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and the running backs today. And, kind of the scuttlebutt around town is that the Patriots are kind of locking in on a quarterback. Probably not that surprising.
Sure.
But just generally, what are your thoughts there on the top 3 guys that are coming out this year?
Yeah, I think that the fact that the Patriots pick 3rd is incredibly invaluable. And that may sound like a difficult thing to reconcile given the fact that getting to pick the 3rd pick is that's a not fun path to enjoy during a 4-13 season. But because of the fact that there are 3 quarterbacks who you could speak to anybody here in Indianapolis, I think they would all agree very much merit that top 3 pick consideration. Yeah. That means that the Patriots have this incredible amount of flexibility, and I believe this. And I'm sure others have differing views of these 3 quarterbacks, but I don't think there is a consolation prize amongst these 3. I think if you dropped Caleb Williams in a different draft, he might be in the conversation for the number 1 pick every single year, and same with Jalen Daniels, and same with Drake Maye. One of them is almost assuredly going to go number 1 overall, and one may very well go 3rd overall. That does not mean that that player is a couple deviations below the top quarterback. It is nip and tuck for all 3 of these players.
Yeah, that's sort of where I've been at for a while, but listening to the 2 of them today at the podium, Drake Maye and Jalen Daniels, we kind of feel the same way, me and Mike, that whoever they end up with, they end up with. But I'm just curious, there seems to be a lot of buzz about Jalen Daniels being the QB2 in this draft. And I think after the college football season ended, it was probably Drake Maye, and now it's flip-flopped. What have you been hearing on that?
Well, I'd say what I've been seeing is a very, very, very close race. I really think, and I'm not trying to just pander to a crowd that is interested in all 3 quarterbacks, If you were put me on the stand and make the case for any of them as the best quarterback in the class, it would not be easy. It would not be difficult for me to do that at all. But if it's a relative, like a conversation between Drake Maye and Jalen Daniels, and how you might separate them. I mean, we're talking about the smallest of margins between the two players. Drake obviously has I call him he arrived from quarterback factory, right? He's 6'4". I don't know. Did he get his
Southern quarterback factory for sure too?
Yeah. What's did he get his official measurements yet? That'll be tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So I got to pay attention to these things a little bit closer apparently. But
they changed it up on now. They do it day of. It wasn't always like that.
So it's according to the website in North Carolina, 6'4", 229 pounds. And if you saw him this morning, I mean, you see he's the 6'4" part I can confirm with my eyes.
Yeah.
The 229, maybe he's 226, maybe he's 235. Who knows? But he's certainly a well-built, has sort of the idyllic frame for a quarterback. He's got an absolute hose of an arm, terrific between the hashes passer, very mobile as well. 2 years ago, actually led North Carolina in rushing. This past season had 9 rushing touchdowns. So a very good athlete. But with Jaden, I mean, we're talking about, one of the best athletes, certainly the most explosive quarterback in this year's class, back-to-back seasons with up over 1,000 rushing yards. Crazy enough for Jalen Daniels, he actually led all FBS players in yards per attempt. I use minimum of 100 carries. I'm sure you could filter it down even lower and he would still be the best, but you've got a couple of guys who had like 1 or 2 carries for 120 yards on 2 reverses or something. So Jaden's an incredibly explosive runner. I thought that maybe the area that Jaden kind of separated himself from any of the quarterbacks in this year's class is clutch production, got to have it situations. I know it's LSU and people think to themselves, he's just playing with a bunch of fellow 5-stars, including 2 potential first-round pick wide receivers. That's true. There were plenty of good players at LSU. They might have had the worst LSU defense in school history, and I'm not saying that as a matter of hyperbole. I'm saying that as a matter of fact. They ended up firing basically the entire defensive staff. I mean, players left and right from the past at LSU are making it very known how much they were disappointed in this past year's defense. They needed Jalen Daniels to score or find a way to lead them to, scores of 40 or 35 points per game. So his, I thought just like meeting the moments was very impressive this past year. But if you told me make the case for Drake Maye at number 1 overall, I could do an hour on that as well because I'm a huge fan of his game.
Just if they go quarterback first round, and this is more of like a football philosophy question because hear about we got to build from the trenches, and everybody wants the flashy object with wide receiver, but we look at the tackle and the wide receiver classes, both very deep. Yeah. But it seems like the tackles are going to go quick.
They will.
When you get down to that early second round, how do you feel about tackle versus wide receiver? The Patriots need to rebuild their offense, but just philosophically, how important? I mean, they need 2 tackles, really. I mean, at this point, we'll get to free agency in a second.
Sure.
But philosophically, how do you feel about that decision right at second round?
Yeah, I think it's going to be it's the beauty for the Patriots, and I'm not saying this again to pander to a Patriots audience, but
you can in a little bit. It's all right.
No, I'm not. I'm saying, I mean, this sincerely is the 2 deepest positions, arguably in this year's draft, are offensive tackle and wide receiver. Wide receiver is definitely the deepest. I think there's a feeling, and I feel this way myself, that the offensive tackle depth eventually drops off, whereas there's going to be guys, middle, even late day 3 that are pretty good wide receivers. They're going to have a chance to make a roster and make an impact early on in their career. So if you're the Patriots, you kind of play this out for 3 rounds, so to speak. If 3, 34, and 67, was it
68?
Yeah, 68, right?
Yep.
You could very, very easily check off each of those 3 boxes, and you would do so not because you're forcing the issue with the need, but because it fits with the value, right? There's going to be top of the second round offensive tackles that I think can play. There's going to be top of the third round wide receivers that I know can play. So the Patriots could go quarterback at 3, and I know that I reject the argument that you shouldn't be taking a quarterback because the rest of the roster is not ready. Part of it is quarterbacks make everybody better when they're the real deal. The other part is that the draft is not over after pick 3. There's a lot of money in free agency that you guys have already referenced to potentially fill some of those holes. And the last part, this is an opportunity cost. Who knows what 2024 looks like, but you don't plan on picking once again the 3rd overall next year, and if you're picking, even if you make a semi-leap to 12th, look at how the Vikings and the Broncos and the Raiders are examining their quarterback options at the moment. They're saying to themselves, are we going to have to pay the full boat to get up to 6, 8, 9, to trade up and grab one of these quarterbacks? Because if we wait around until 12 or 13, they're not going to be available. So if I'm the Patriots, to me, it's a very straightforward equation. Whichever of these 3 quarterbacks is sitting there waiting for us at pick 3, we have to do everything in our power to build the offense around his skill set, because each of these three are very different. And also we need to surround that player with as many resources as we possibly can.
Yeah, I want to take you to free agency for a second, though, because we've been talking a lot about obviously those three spots. Quarterback, receiver, tackle. Drake Maye made it easy for us. He just told us that those are the biggest needs on the team.
Yeah.
But free agency to me I don't see as particularly strong at those three spots. So what do you see the Patriots doing in free agency, and how do you see them kind of spending all this cap space?
Well, I think you always start with the guys that are your own, right? And I know that Elliott Wolf talked about both Mike Onwenu and also Kyle Duggar as two of the guys that they really want to keep around, and it would be good for the obvious reasons. They're both good players. It would be good for draft retention, which is an important tenet of good sustained success, or getting back on the track for sustained success. And the best money is usually the money that you know where it's going towards. And both of those players have a pretty obvious skill set. You also know that if there are areas of concern, you know them, right? Whereas if you're paying a guy that you haven't had some exposure to in the past, I don't know that you have nearly the same amount of comfort with the potential warts that player might have. So I always start with the guys that are in-house, and there are certainly other notable, Hunter Henry amongst them, and just guys that have made, Zeke Elliott, who have made meaningful contributions, but those two feel like the top of the list for me. And then I think that you're right. It's not going to blow anybody away in terms of offensive tackle or wide receiver class, especially once we finish up with this franchise tag window, which will probably end up leading to either a couple of guys being tagged at that position or just getting a long-term deal done. So my feeling will be that while they have a lot of money to spend, you're always surprised by how fast the resources dry up in free agency between the draft and take care of your own and some of those extensions, and having sort of a kitty available to once we get to the season. So I would think selectively aggressive would be my mindset if I'm the Patriots in free agency.
Yeah, it seems like defensive side of the ball. So it feels like it needs an edge. I mean, with Judon, you don't really have any depth behind him. He's getting a little bit older. Sure. It seems like Brian Burns, guys like that, they have some guys out there, Josh Allen even, that could maybe reinforce that defense, and then you can focus really on the offense in the draft.
Yeah, interesting kind of edge class, interesting defensive tackle class. There's some players on that side of the ball. Now, of course, many or some will be tagged, so that free agent class always thins out a little bit. But, we're, 10 days away?
Yeah.
10 days away from free agency, and it's going to be a wild few days.
Yeah, so the salary cap, not to get too into the math here, but
let's do it.
It was a little bit higher than what was projected, about $10 million extra, I think, for every team. And it seems to me like that has made teams maybe less reluctant to use the franchise tag this time around because they might have a little bit of extra cash. And for a team like the Patriots, it almost worked against them because guys like Michael Pittman Jr., for example, might have been available in a regular free agency, is now in some way, shape, or form, as Chris Ballard said the other day, is going to be in Indianapolis. So did you see that as kind of a way that this thing went, with the tag this year?
I would say that generally speaking, it was hard to find many losers from the cap spike. It was mostly winners because I suppose the way that you framed it is both accurate and wise as it pertains to the Patriots. Like maybe there are a few guys that aren't going to be available because the tag is now a little more affordable for their team. But I will say this. It's like 10 or 12 or 13 million bucks more to spend that's going to go towards somebody eventually. And, the hope is that sooner rather than later, you're already planning for what the next wave of in-house free agents are going to cost, extension candidates, right? So beyond some of the guys that we've talked about, maybe part of the puzzle is a Christian Barmore extension, right?
That's what we've been pounding the table for.
Yeah, who obviously has emerged as one of their best defensive players, one of their best players, period, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, there's no rule that says you have to extend a player, but doing the dance of potential free agency just makes things more complicated. It certainly opens the door for those guys to go test the market if they'd so choose. But yeah, so for the Patriots, as we know, you don't have to use all the cap space. But yeah, they are. I am no Miguel Benson, aka Pat's Cap.
Shout out Pat's Cap. All right,
we love Miguel. He's the best. But I think his number. I think I saw. I don't know. I have to check more recently. 87 million bucks.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's nice. It's. Feel like I think that's what my wife's mindset is when she goes to the mall. I'm equipped with all the resources. Right. Not actually, but
Just putting those Amazon.com orders in every day.
Come on now.
Packages at the door all the time. You're just, again?
This what?
It's the life we live here. Yeah. Well, Phil, we'll let you get to your responsibilities here for ESPN, but thank you so much for taking a moment.
My responsibility is to hang out here. I love the backdrop. I love that we leaned into the Pat Patriot.
See, people were making fun of it back home. They said it looked like a bed sheet. I think it looks nicer than a bed sheet.
I think it looks nice.
Thank you.
For those the most comfortable bed sheet of all time. How's that?
Thank you.
Yeah. That's right. Field Yates, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sorry to miss you guys for those that are going to be at the draft event, but I won't move again. I told my wife this is the last time we're moving, so yeah. Future years. I'm back.
Thanks, Field.
Thank you.
All right, so Evan, let's turn now to the wide receivers. Everybody's waiting to see Marvin Harrison, of course. I was excited just to see him in person, just to kind of see, what his size looks like, what kind of build he has. Unfortunately, he did not speak this morning. We're still waiting to hear. Perhaps he will speak later. Perhaps he won't speak at all. Does he really even need to speak?
I love that Marvin Harrison Jr. has just decided to stand on the film and be like, I don't need to do any of this. I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to talk to the media. I am set.
My tape. Here it is. That's what I do.
This is me.
I'm Marvin Harrison. That's all you
later.
need to know.
Yeah, good name too, right? So there's really just no reason for him to do any of this, and I love that that's being normalized to an extent. I know some people are it's going to rub them the wrong way that these guys are opting out, but what's the point? And I think Caleb Williams said it when someone asked him about why he's not throwing here, and he said that I have 33 starts in college football. If me throwing in shorts and a t-shirt is going to change your mind about who I am as a prospect when you can watch 30 plus games of me at college football, then that's ridiculous. And I think that's how Marvin Harrison Jr. feels about it too. So I'm not. It does absolutely nothing to his stock to me that he kind of blew off the combine. I honestly could care less.
No, I mean just look at the film, right? That's all you have to do. But let's stick with these top-ranked receivers. And I don't know about you, but I've kind of made peace that these guys are probably just not going to fall in the right period or time frame of the first round for the Patriots to be able to have a selection at them. But this is another draft class, Evan, that absolutely is loaded. And I mean, it seems like every single year you see the wide receiver position gets, there's just always good guys. I mean, we were talking before we were taping, and I mean, you made a great point about last year's class. I mean, I'll let you make it again, but compare last year's class to this year's class.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot of where I would put last year's class into this year's class, and the main reason why is that the run last year started in the 20s in the first round, which tells me that the run this year, how many wide receivers are going to go in the first round if that is what happened last year? So you look at Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnson. Those are the big four that went in the first round a year ago. I think you're starting at maybe wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 for the top of that board, which means that you have to think a guy like A.D. Mitchell is now potentially going in the first round. Certainly Brian Thomas Jr. is going in the first round. Is Keon Coleman also going in the first round? Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, go right on down the line. I think it kind of stops at maybe 8 or 9 guys that have a potential of going in the first round out of this class. So if you're the Patriots and you're going quarterback early and you're looking at 34, you're looking at 68, at what point do you just have to jump on the carousel and say we have to at least get one of these guys before, as we like to say, the parade passes us by?
Do we get 20 picks that are nothing but offensive linemen and wide receivers in this first round? Like, it seems like you're going to at least have a run where there's 20 picks that are all that position.
I've been doing this for a while now because I'm old, and I will tell you, I have never seen a top of the draft board this heavy on one side of the ball.
Yeah.
The first 9 guys on every single consensus board that I see are all offensive players, 1 through 9. And then at 10, usually you get Dallas Turner at that point. So you're looking at a board that is heavily skewed towards the offense. It's not that the defense doesn't have any good position groups. It's just not a ton of top-end talent. It's more like depth, like at edge, corner, things like that. But this draft, loaded on the offensive side of the ball at the top.
You mentioned Brian Thomas, A.D. Mitchell. I mean, those two guys to me seem like ideal. And I didn't even mention Malik Neighbors. I feel like I just have to break up with him because I'm like, you're too good, and I really don't look forward to watching him torch our defense or anyone else's defense for that matter. But I'm sure it's going to happen. But going back to Mitchell and Thomas, like those seem like the kind of guys that can develop into that number 1 outside receiver that everybody, everyone talk about Marvin Harrison, but I think these guys have that kind of potential where maybe you trade back into the first round, maybe you get lucky, they fall to the second round, but those guys seem like if you could get a quarterback first overall, you get a developmental receiver, could be the guy. That seems like a home run to me, no offense to the offensive line.
Yeah, it's a little different with both guys, another flavors thing. Brian Thomas Jr., more of that explosive, linear athlete. The comp that I was working with him a little bit was like a slender DK Metcalf. He's not as rocked up as DK Metcalf is, but he's definitely that explosive guy that has some concerns about, is he really going to be a technician at the top of the route? Probably not. But if you want a vertical receiver that's going to go down the field, then he's someone that is definitely checks that box, whereas A.D. Mitchell. He's 6'3", 6'4", a similar size, honestly, all around the board for A.D. Mitchell as Brian Thomas, but he's more of that technician. He's someone that can really break down and has quick feet, can sink his hips and get in and out of the break, but he's just not as explosive. I wouldn't expect him to run as fast as a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., but one thing that is really appealing, and I don't know if they'll have the opportunity to do it because Thomas Jr. is probably a teens pick, I would say. A.D. Mitchell maybe late 20s, early 30s, more likely, more realistic. But if they do get Jaden Daniels at 3, pairing him with one of his LSU teammates, it's not going to be neighbors, but like that's everybody wants to do that. That's the appealing thing about all these guys is trying to do that. I've kind of
the Bengals
cooled off on Tez Walker, who's Drake Maye's #1 receiver, but if that's a 3rd round, 4th round guy that you take just because of the familiarity with Drake Maye, I don't hate that either. But if Brian Thomas Jr., I don't know, maybe he gets lost into a shuffle of like 6-7 guys at that receiver position. Who knows? I mean, maybe they trade up. I don't know. But it just is someone that I think is extremely intriguing.
A couple more names. I'm just going to kind of run through a few guys that, interested me before and continue to. Malachi Corley, really wanted to hear from him. Talked about him kind of being a Debo comp. How fast is he going to be? That's my big question. A guy like that who can do a lot, but you want to make sure he's got an explosive element. Troy Franklin, I know we kind of were making like the Taekwon jokes a little bit about him, but explosive player. And it's, weaponizing the offense if that's what you need to do. That guy has some speed. There's all kinds of different varieties. It's like, and right now with the way that the Patriots offense is, I feel like you really just look inside the slot, and then we've got a slot receiver, and otherwise everything else is kind of on the table to me.
Yeah, I actually really like Troy Franklin. I know that Patriots fans are going to take one look at him and be like, nope, I'm out because of his size and similarity in body type to Tyquan Thornton. But I look at him as someone that is a lot more advanced and a lot more nuanced with his route running than Tyquan was coming out. Releases, top of the route. He's someone that a lot of people that are really high on him, higher than me, have said runs routes more like a Devontae Smith than he does like a Tyquan Thornton. So someone that truly does have a lot of he's got cool tape. Like he's got some really cool little nuances. Like he'll just like foot fire and come out and like guys are just like, whoa, like what are we doing here? And then he just blows past you. So there's a lot of I love watching him run routes, and I think he can do it from multiple alignments. So I like Troy Franklin. I would assume that this group, this Patriots brass, is probably going to say, let's not make the Tyquan Thornton mistake and draft 1. Like, let's not do this again and go somewhere in a different direction. But I think he's someone that Patriots fans are like, oh, no way. But I think he's better than people expect.
You talk about guys who are fun to watch. And, I mean, you were down at the Senior Bowl, Lab McConkey. I mean, it's a clinic with route running with that guy. He spoke today, hey, what do you think you're good at? I mean, it's like, hello, have you watched this guy play? Why are you asking him this question? Like, we all know what he's good at. I just had to bring him up because I think that, he kind of gets pigeonholed. He said today, he's like, I actually play more on the outside than the slot. People look at him and assume he's a slot receiver, but he's another one that, day 2 kind of a guy. You get a really good player who can come in here and has instantly got some polish to his game and the ability to hopefully, get open quick, move the chains. I think that's what the Patriots need most, more than, that big X receiver. Yes, of course, you're always looking for that. But to me, it's that other receiver, that every down kind of Z receiver that you can move around, that you can have some fun with. McConkey seems like he could be that kind of guy.
Yeah, the biggest thing with McConkey is sample size. He just wasn't healthy for the entire year last year. But when you watch him, when he was healthy, he's electric. He's somebody that has vertical acceleration for days, and he's got a great feel for decelerating. I think this is one of the most underrated traits about wide receivers that people overlook, and it sounds so simple, but can you stop on a dime? Can you open it up, get guys opened up on the other side of the ball, accelerate up the field, and then efficiently stop down and slow yourself down and then make a cut? He's one of the most efficient top of the route guys in this draft, no doubt about that.
It's kind of funny. You don't think like great breaks is like a scouting term, like great breaks. He's got great breaks.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, but he's really does, and he has enough vertical burst that he's able to push vertical and make it look like he's going to run by you, and then at the last second he just stops on a dime and then creates that separation. So if you watch him against like Terrion Arnold from Alabama, who might be CB1 in this draft, probably the most consistent guy that got open against Arnold last year on film. Against Florida, forget about it. He had like a ridiculous game against Florida. You just wish that it was more. You only had like 400 yards of production last year because he just didn't play a ton.
So one more guy I'm going to mention, and I don't expect you to comment on him, but my own Holy Cross, Jalen Coker was here. Holy
like
Cross.
Jalen Coker.
Holy
This is
Cross
not
guy-
like
no.
this is not like last year where you had some of those fake ones, dudes. Like
No, this is a real one.
This is a real prospect.
I've watched him for a while. He's got great size. I mean, he's C.J. Hansen's a guard who we'll see tomorrow. 2 Holy Cross kids. These are the third and fourth guys ever from Holy Cross, local program, to go here to the combine. So excited just to see how Coker runs tomorrow. I think he's a contested catch guy. He's an outside guy. He said it himself today, but I'm excited to see my Holy Cross guy get out there and perform tomorrow.
As long as he doesn't bomb the combine, that's a day 2. That's a day 3 pick.
Yeah,
that's a day 3 guy. Like you have a real day 3 guy.
Bring him to Foxborough. I'll love him. I try not to harass him too much. He's like, get away from me. All right, I think we covered most of the wide receivers. We want to really go in depth. Anybody else that we didn't really touch on?
We didn't touch on Roman
like
Wilson, who is another one of my guys right now. He said he's going to run in the 4.3s. If he does that, then forget about 68. That's not happening. He's going top 50. I think that there's so many different guys that are going to get lost into the weeds of the second round, third round picks in this draft that all could come out of the other side as players. Brendan Rice from USC is another one. Like those guys, I think all have really good, foundational elements about their games. I love Roman Wilson though.
Yeah.
I just think that that's somebody that at the next level, he didn't necessarily, similar to J.J. McCarthy because of the volume, he didn't necessarily put up the numbers that some of these other guys did because they didn't throw as much as at Michigan. If he was in like Washington's offense last year, he's a 1,000-yard receiver easily.
So let's move on to the running backs, and I feel like this is slowly becoming like the forgotten position. Like, it's like you talk about needing to get
it's because they don't matter.
Get more explosiveness on offense, but granted that these guys aren't, I guess, like long-term building blocks. You wouldn't like really look. I think we all kind of look at running backs as, well, you draft one, you run him into the ground for 4 years, you let him go, you draft another running back. But in between, you've got those 4 years where you can really find some productive guys. And I know, look, we got free agency. It's just around the corner. It's coming up. We think that's a position, got some great guys, and usually not something the Patriots would address, but it's a huge need. Blake Corum's the top of the list, though, coming off national championship. Heard from him, but otherwise there's just so many guys that are going to bleed from day 2 to day 3 that have talent, that have that explosiveness, that you can round out your roster. I just think it's such an underrated position, and they're going to draft at least one of these guys, maybe 2, and you're going to be like, oh man, I didn't even realize they were going to draft running back, but they absolutely are.
So this is not, there's no Saquon Barkley, there's no Christian McCaffrey, there's no lock top 10 pick in this draft at running back, but like you just said, there's great mid-round depth in this draft. So I don't even know if there's going to be a running back that goes in the top 50 because I think teams are just going to wait for the run to start.
Yeah.
And whenever it starts, that's when everybody will jump in and get their guy. So I look at it as like a 3rd or 4th round sweet spot. And I think the Patriots are in the market there. I'm not sure I really love a top 70 pick on a running back given their needs, but the 4th round is definitely in play for them at running back. And I think that there's a bunch of guys that will be in that range of the 4th round. We don't know exactly when they'll pick in the 4th round yet because we don't have the comp picks, but somewhere in the beginning of the 4th round, obviously. So I think that they'll be right there to take some of the guys that we like.
Let's talk about Bucky. Bucky's our guy.
We like Bucky's our guy.
Explosive.
Captain America, I think that Bucky
Irving, we're talking from Oregon.
Bucky Irving from Oregon.
Not the other Bucky that's in the draft. Is there another Bucky?
Yeah, Bucky Irving from Oregon. We've talked about wanting to pair Ramondre Stevenson with a little bit
Thunder
more
and
of
lightning.
Yes,
Thunder and lightning.
Exactly.
Right?
Thunder
1-2 punch.
Lendell White and Reggie Bush. Let's get 2 guys in there that are complementary. And I think that that's one thing. I thought Zeke was great last year for what it was. But they were redundant. They were the same back. So, it's cool that you can kind of go, drive for drive when they were both healthy or whatever. But I really feel like that's a spot the Patriots could get a little bit more explosive. And especially in this Alex Van Pelt offense,
Nick Chubb,
they're going to run that wide zone. They're going to want to bounce it up through the middle. Let's have a little bit more of a home run hitter that can hit those runs.
Just a couple other guys to kind of mention. Imani Bailey, one guy I liked it. Dylan Labe from UNH, who, we talked about a little bit on the quick debrief, but local kid, it seems like it might be a natural fit, maybe another one. But I think you can look at pretty much any back and style. And, of course, these guys a little bit more maybe – I don't want to call them third down backs because I feel like that kind of pigeonholes them. Maybe they are, but I think overall they've got all around skills that could contribute. The Patriots just have huge needs, so it's hard to rule anybody out.
Yeah, Dylan Lobby is, I think, a sub-package back is the best way to put it.
There we go. I like that.
I don't think he's a true third down back where he's only going to play in the passing game. But one thing that's appealing to him, and he did this down in Mobile, is he can line up in different spots. He can flex out and play a little bit of receiver as well. So he's got a ton of versatility to play in the passing game and in the run game. As a runner, more of that one cut and go, good acceleration, can get through the line of scrimmage. And if you're going to get, let's put it all together, if you're going to draft Jalen Daniels at 3 overall and you are going to be a very heavy shotgun team, and then you have a back like Dylan Lobby who's a little bit more of that spread, undersized but explosive running back, and that's somebody you get read option going with those two guys, and if you get the corner, then he's going to be off to the races. So I mean, that's what you have to look for in all these backs.
One more guy I'm going to throw at you on the spot. I mean, I don't know how much you've dove into the running backs, but Jonathan Brooks from Texas. I know he's coming off an ACL injury. Heard from him today. He expects to be ready. Another one that kind of appeals to me. Like I always, you're like, he's coming off an ACL. We don't need it. Like, could we stash him maybe? But he said he thinks he'll be ready July 1st. Have you watched him at all?
Well, I've watched the Texas offense a ton, obviously, for the other guys. And I think the biggest thing with him is that he fits in really what I was just talking about in the Jalen Daniels situation, because that Sark system that's what they are. Their motion, their spread, their RPO. Yeah. So I think that's a lot, but he does have a really good power to him too, even despite being more of that lighter type of back. So I think that he's someone that probably falls because of his knee, but maybe that is the right way to go for this Patriots. It's certainly what I would do. Like, I'm not taking a running back in the first 3 rounds. So if you're looking at it as like we need a running back at some point, but it's probably too early with all of our other needs, then maybe you can get him in the 5th or 6th round and he ends up being a steal. I'll give you one more just from the Senior Bowl. Marshawn Lloyd from USC, who is someone that really impressed me as a route runner, getting up the field. This is a vertical back, like not necessarily the James White 3rd and 4, we're going to move the chains, but somebody that rail route, seam even out of the backfield. He can get up the field, and if you get him on a linebacker into some space in a foot race, he can get up the field and get by the guy. So I was really impressed with him at the Senior Bowl. Dewan Edwards too from Georgia is another one of those day 3 backs that I think can do the same type of thing. So all those guys are a little thicker. They're not necessarily the Bucky Irving like we were talking about earlier, but still have a little bit of a juice in the passing game.
All right, so we got through the quarterbacks, wide receivers, the running backs, all very important positions for the Patriots, and this will be the last wrap-up we do from here, so we want to just take a minute now to just, overall thoughts from the Combine. We've been here all week. We will talk to the offensive linemen tomorrow. Again, that's a huge need for the Patriots, so we'll be sure next week we'll be talking about it during Patriots Unfiltered. We'll be plenty more videos, mock drafts. You guys know how we do it all spring. There's going to be videos coming at you left and right, draft and free agency. But just overall, Evan, like what are your biggest takeaways here from Indy in 2024?
Well, I think either the Patriots are putting on the world's best smokescreen or everybody knows what they're doing. I don't know which one it is, and maybe that's what they want. They're like feeding information from both sides of their mouth. But at the end of the day, when the dust settles, it just feels like quarterback is where they're going 3rd overall. And it's for the easiest way, it's a straight line, right? Like it's the easiest way through, and I think that it's a no-brainer with these 2 quarterbacks sitting there. If it was one of those years that was a little bit worse of a class and you weren't totally sold on it and things like that, that would be different. But this year I don't feel like it's like that. A couple years ago when it's like Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, like obviously they're not going to draft a quarterback. But this year they have 2 quarterbacks. They had 3rd overall pick, and there's 3 quarterbacks that are worth a top 3 pick. So someone's going to be there on the board. And you're telling me that Drake Maye, Jalen Daniels, someone is going to be sitting and the Patriots are going to be on the clock, and Elliott Wolf is going to be like, I'm good. Like, I don't really see that happening. So I think that's really where the wind is blowing. But we should mention that it is smokescreen season. So
totally.
All these things could just be
everywhere.
Fugazi, right? And secondly, it's March 1st, and it is 2 months basically to go until the draft, so it's a long way to go still.
Of course, free agency. I mean, we're less than 2 weeks away from free agency. Patriots have a bunch of money. Gerard Mayo, walk back, cash to burn. I mean, I think he was saying that kind of in jest, and everybody ran with it. But they have the money to do things. The reports they have offers out on Kyle Duggar. They've been negotiating with Michael Onwenu. They expressed their support for those guys, that they would like those guys back. We've talked about Christian Barmore being a priority. Extend him early. Don't let him get to free agency next year. But I think my biggest takeaway just from the draft is that for a team that needs to remake their offense, it's kind of a good year. And I feel bad that we're kind of pushing the tackles, down to tomorrow, day 6, really. And we haven't seen them. And, maybe once we do see, Joe Alt, and we're like, oh, my God, he's enormous. We need, that's a huge need for the Patriots.
Definitely, it'll be love at first sight with me and Joe
I know.
Alt.
We'll have to keep you back from him.
That's going to be easy. But I think that, this tackle class, there's not a ton of depth. And so the question is that as much as we all love the receivers, 34, quarterback at 3, tackle at 34, just the way that the board falls, that seems to be the best way to go about things, just because of the depth is really at receiver. That's where you have a depth, and then tackle is the spot where I think there is a precipitous drop off once you get through the first 8-9 names or so at the tackle spot. So I'm excited to see the tackles. I think there's a couple guys that we've talked about before, but looking at that 34 spot, Kingsley Suamaitai, Patrick Paul, like those types of guys are probably more in the conversation instead of like Olo Fashanu and Joe Alt, who are going to be up at the top of the draft. And measurables, as out of anything at the combine that matters, arm length for tackles might actually matter the most out of all this stuff.
36-inch arms.
You got to get to 33. That's the minimum. That's
right?
the threshold.
Yeah.
And a guy like Jordan Morgan, for example, from Arizona, he measured in with 32 7/8 inch arms. So he's been stretching. I've been told. I'm just kidding, but I bet you he has. And if he can get to 31 1/8, and I know it's ridiculous to think like, oh, that could really make that big of a difference, but that's how NFL teams operate, and that those thresholds are important for tackles, and that's going to be important for them on Sunday, I believe, is when they measure and weigh in.
My feeling is like in the first round, in the late first round, mid first round, it's going to kind of be interesting to see how the wide receivers and tackles come off the board. I mean, we jokingly said maybe all 20 picks, but what's the run on first? Does it kind of go wide receiver, tackle, or is it a big, straight run on those guys? It's just that second pick for the Patriots is so interesting, and that's, if they do go quarterback, then it really that next pick becomes just fascinating. What direction do you go? And it almost goes to a core football debate. Do you make sure you got him protected, and even at that point it might be a little tenuous, or do you make sure you get him a high-ranking explosive receiver? Because even if you get to the third pick, we could probably get somebody in the third round at wide receiver. They'd be like, okay, I think that'll work.
That's my concern. My concern is that at tackle, they need an immediate starter at tackle. And I'm a big proponent of you build from the inside out. And the quarterback's on the inside, so that counts, right? Yeah. But your quarterback, you go inside out from there, and the receiver is really the icing on it, the cherry on top. Like, that's the last thing that you do. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily look at it that way anymore, but I still think that the way the Bills did it by dropping Stephon Diggs in later, or the way the Eagles did it with A.J. Brown, those types of things I feel like is the way that you go about building a roster for sustainability. When you start to get into, just the shiny new toys, a 4-win team drafting a wide receiver up high, it just doesn't make much sense to me. I think you're putting the cart before the horse. So I think that's what I would go, and I'm looking forward to seeing these guys. Tackles are one of those spots that you just want to see it. Like, what's this guy look like? What's his body composition?
How high up there is he?
Yeah, exactly. I can take out the tape measure, start measuring the arms for him. So those types of things are important.
All right, so that's going to do it for the video portion, at least, of Deuce and Lazar in Indy 2024. We will come back in next week with plenty of content, wrapping up the tackles. Stay tuned, of course, Patriots Unfiltered Tuesdays and Thursdays. And launching March 13th, that'll be our next episode of Patriots Draft Countdown presented by Bud Light. We're going to do a live show right on the first day of official free agency, even though at that point we'll probably have a pretty good sense of who the Patriots, we'll have a lot of reports if they're going to sign this guy and that guy. It'll all kind of become official on Wednesday. It'll give us a chance to really reevaluate the draft board and see how they're approaching these free agent needs. And coming up next week as well, we'll have a full free agency preview video. Evan and I will be highlighting some of the players that we think could possibly fit the Patriots. There's a lot of good players out there, guys. There's defensive ends, there's tackles, tackles, no, not so much. Meant to say edge players, running backs even, guys like Austin Eckler. I mean, there's always running back names on the free agency market, but real quick, just any initial thoughts on free agency?
Well, I think you just kind of nailed it with the players on the defensive side of the ball that might become available. unfortunately for the Patriots, I guess, that extra little bit of cap space that every team got that they weren't expecting, about $10 million, that made it easier for contenders to tag their receivers. So T. Higgins is going back to Cincinnati, or is going to, it's going to be a massive haul to get him as a trade. Michael Pittman Jr. here this week, Chris Ballard, their general manager in Indianapolis, said one way or another Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be a Colt. Whether it's on the franchise tag or as an extension, we're going to go right up against the deadline, but one way or another he's going to be a Colt. So now you take him off the board. I can't imagine that Mike Evans is going to play anywhere else except Tampa Bay. So you can take him off the board. So once you start to really narrow it down, I like Calvin Ridley. I think he's a solid player, but he's really the number one receiver. And so now you're competing in the market with teams that aren't 4-win football teams, that have more contender status. So that makes it harder. So I don't necessarily look at this receiver group in free agency and get all goo-goo gaga about it. And I know that that's unfortunate. Same with the quarterbacks, because I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to be available. So I look at the defensive side of the ball. I think edge, really the entire defensive line, whether you want to call them edge rushers or defensive linemen. I think they're interior guys. I think there's guys that are rush the passer out on the edge that are intriguing. And that's where I would spend the money. If they're going to spend the money and go out and make a splash, I would probably pay a Christian Wilkins, pay a Brian Burns, pay somebody that's really of that ilk at the top, not necessarily go out and pay Gabe Davis just because you need a receiver.
All right, well, that's going to do it for Deuce and Lazar and Indy. You put a wrap on this one, but folks, we're just getting started here in the offseason. Free agency is just about to start. We got the draft around the corner, big boards, mock drafts. You know it all. We love it. We're here to win it. We got to get this team. We got to get this team back in the playoffs. We need some talent, so it's an exciting spring. We're excited to see all the moves the Patriots are going to make, and we'll be here with you every step of the way.